Hello everyone and welcome to Plaid and Prejudice, a series that gives me an excuse to buy more clothes and you a chance to explore unreasonable bias. Next week is Thanksgiving, and you know what that means. No, not food and family. Moana's coming out. Moana is the latest Disney princess movie about a 16-year-old Polynesian girl who goes on an epic sailing adventure with the demigod Maui. I'm not exaggerating when I say that words cannot adequately describe how deeply excited I am for this movie. I've been invested in this since before Frozen was released, back before we started this channel. When articles first started surfacing about her around fall of 2015, the phrase people really latched onto was Disney's first Polynesian princess. But soft. What white nonsense from yonder internet window breaks? From humorous memes to distressed Facebook comments, many people were upset that Disney was not only making another Polynesian princess, but that they were pandering to PC culture. And it's not just white people on the internet, y'all. I was telling a colleague of mine about Moana, and in response he said, "But didn't Disney already make Lilo and Stitch?" I don't know if he was being entirely serious. He knows I make videos about feminism. He knows I love Disney. He could have said it just to annoy me. If so, it clearly worked, because this happened over a year ago and I'm still riled up about it. But the joke's on him, because guess what his daughter's getting for her birthday? Now he'll have to go see it. Anyways, so there's a few different things at play here with this idea. So let's break it down into 3 parts. Number 1, Lilo is not a princess. There is a pattern with Disney movies, one I can definitely speak to in the recent years, where their movies fall into one of 2 big categories. You've got your general movies, often but not always in a contemporary setting with a big cast of characters, sometimes focusing on male characters more, but not always, and more often than not, isn't set in a fantasy setting. Examples of these movies include Wreck-It Ralph's Zootopia, Chicken Little, and Bolt. I chose these movies specifically because they exist after the creation of the Disney Princess lineup. And that is important, because when they aren't making these movies, they're making movies with teen girls and young women protagonists, set in a fantasy setting with magic, with the intent to be added to the Disney Princess lineup. Lilo is not only not in the lineup and doesn't remotely fit the parameters Disney usually sticks to for it, she isn't even the most marketed character of her movie. Sure, the movie is Lilo and Stitch, but the story really revolves around Stitch, and he's the one with the most merchandise. Moana is an opportunity to show little girls of color that they can be magical heroes too. We don't know for sure whether or not Moana is going to be in the lineup, but she already fits the requirements of someone who would. And regardless, she's definitely the main character. It is called Moana. And with this being post-implementation of the Disney Princess line, I have no doubt that her movie has been made with this marketing capability in mind. It would be uncharacteristically short-sighted of Disney not to consider it when making this movie. Number 2, Polynesian does not equal Hawaiian. If you grew up in the United States, the likelihood that you ever got more than a passing glance at the South Pacific in your formal education is small, and probably not your fault. Americans are also pushed sugary ideas of this area by the travel industry to get us to spend money there. So when I say South Pacific, your brain probably thinks of a vague geographic area. You might think the Polynesian and South Pacific are synonyms. And if I were to ask you to name a place in Polynesia that wasn't Hawaii, would you be able to? The things I mentioned just now, I experienced before I started doing the research for this video, at which point I realized just how wrong my perception of the area was. So I am going to give you an extremely basic overview. The South Pacific is just the south part of the Pacific Ocean. Easy enough. The term Oceania is much more relevant in this context. Oceania is a region in the Pacific Ocean that contains the subregions Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia. People who come from Oceania are generally referred to as Pacific Islander or Pacifica. It should be noted that these 3 subregions are not always names that Pacifica people particularly like, because they did not choose them. The missionaries who came to colonize them did. Since we know that Moana is a Polynesian princess, let's look at that area specifically. Polynesia is a triangle-shaped area that includes thousands of islands, some of which include Samoa, Tonga, Easter Island, the Hawaiian Islands, and Tokelau. The big thing to stress here is that these terms aren't interchangeable, so before you use them, you should be considerate of what you're actually talking about. Just as the United Kingdom does not just mean England, and Native American does not just mean Seminole, Polynesian isn't just Hawaiian. And Moana is not Hawaiian. Her voice actress, actual cinnamon roll Auli'i is, but Moana is not. She has only been described as Polynesian, which doesn't come without its own baggage. The setting for the movie is a fictional conglomeration of many different islands and cultures in Polynesia. This was apparently done so no one culture would be favored over another. But it does homogenize thousands of individual cultures that naturally have some similarities but are different from one another. This can lead to harmful stereotypes, especially for people who might not be at all familiar with Polynesia. And it encourages the idea that all of Polynesia, and even the South Pacific, is the same. On the other hand, I have seen many Pacifica people talk about how Polynesian isn't necessarily a harmful identifier because there are many mixed Pacifica peoples. Number 3. Not all Pacifica stories are the same. Lilo and Stitch is not flawless representation, but there's no doubt that it does a good job of challenging the pineapple hula paradise the mainlanders are fed of Hawaii. A harmful perception that comes from limited representation, which is why diverse stories are not only important, but carry such significance and power in shaping the way we think of the world around us. But I guess Lilo and Stitch did such a good job of portraying Hawaii that it led white people to believe that it is the only story to tell of the almost 120,000 square miles that Polynesia occupies. There seems to be this idea that because Lilo and Stitch exists, Polynesia never needs to be the focus of a Disney movie ever again. Unlike Germany, I guess. Breaking news! We've just received word that the one story about Polynesia has been told. So everybody thinking about possibly doing one, just don't bother. Yep. In other news, another Star Wars movie is coming out next month. Okay. If you are going to seriously complain that that is a reason Moana shouldn't have been made, then I also want to see you throw away your copies of Frozen, because Lilo and Stitch already had a relationship between sisters. Demand that Merida be removed from the lineup because we already have a fiery independent redhead in Ariel. Obviously don't do that. That would be ridiculous. I hate to break it to you, but literally everything you ever consume is going to have, at the very least, vague similarities to something else. But just because The Rescuers, Oliver and Company, and Bolt all feature young girls who have special connections to animals doesn't mean that there should only be one of them in existence, and it doesn't mean they all tell the same story. There's a difference between being repetitive and having similarities. Lilo and Stitch and Moana are about as similar as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Wreck-It Ralph. Is there a bullied young princess with black hair in the latter two? Yeah, but so what? They're completely different stories. They're not even in the same genre. If you find yourself only caring about repeating story elements when it comes to stories that don't focus on white people, I've got some news for you. Everyone's a little bit racist. But you should acknowledge that and resolve to be better instead of leaving racist comments about diversity on the Disney Animation Facebook page. Lilo and Stitch tells one story about Hawaii. It's not every story about Hawaii, and it certainly isn't the only story worth telling about Polynesia or the South Pacific. Basically, just because Moana exists doesn't mean that Lilo is irrelevant, and it doesn't mean you have to choose one over the other. Amazingly enough, Disney can tell more than one story about the same area, just as you can have more than one favorite Disney movie. Multiple stories give us a more complex view of the elements they focus on, and it helps represent a more complete world. To quote Pete's Dragon, there's room for everyone in this world. And that includes their stories. Thank you all for watching. I know that there are a few things about this movie that have been in the news over the last few months that I did not talk about, and that was because I did not feel like it was my place as a non-Pacifica person to talk about those issues on a platform. So yeah, I am asking, begging, I'm begging all of you, please show your support for this movie. Please show Disney that we want more stories with diverse characters. Like this video if you're excited to hear the soundtrack, leave a comment below with your favorite person of color associated with the project, and subscribe to The Princess and the Scrivener for more videos on Disney, feminism, pop culture critiques, and more. The Princess will see you next week.
Staring at the edge of the water.